Hey guys, Dylan from the Geek Duo here, and today I'll be bringing you another RWBY theory video. Now, the reason I'm doing it like this and not standing over here is, well, I don't actually have any reference images or anything. This is purely based off of things that have yet to come, so I have no need to have this whole left side of the screen as reference room. Now, this RWBY theory is entirely based off of Ambrosius's warning, and if you don't know who Ambrosius is, then you've probably not seen Volume 8, Chapter 12, and should probably click off this video if you don't want that spoiled. Anyway, at the end of Chapter 12, Team RWBY tasks Ambrosius, the spirit of the staff, with creating a space similar to the vaults to link a collection of portals or doorways, whatever, that popped up all over Atlas and Mantle to a singular exit doorway in Vacuo. However, they weren't as thorough with this request as they were with their earlier one. So Ambrosius was able to take a little creative liberties with what he made. And this is shown by him saying that initially the idea of them using a vault area could mean they're more foolish than they thought. He smirks when he's looking at the schematics and everything, and his final warning of not to fall. And it's this warning that made me and many others believe that it's almost guaranteed that at least one person will fall. The only question is, who should it be? We can already figure out that at least one person is going to fall into wherever this void takes them. We can also assume that falling into the void will not kill a person, nor will having the vault area close because the staff is used again. In my scripting of this, I linked that to Ambrosius's rule of not being able to destroy. However, I thought on it more, and if you asked Ambrosius to create you a gun and you shot someone with that gun, they'd still die. So it's more based off of the fact that Carrie said that there's going to be a detour before arriving at Vacuo. So that means that we will likely be following whoever falls, traveling through wherever they land. Now, in my second theory, we're actually following inside the vault and outside the vault, but because I'm saying a detour before Vacuo, as in reaching the kingdom of Vacuo, like the actual city, traveling through the Vacuan wastelands would still count as a detour. And there's been several proposed theories already. There's a Wonderland theory, there's past, there's an alternate timeline, whatever. There's also the theory that no one falls and the detour is just half a season of Team Stark backstory, but we're going under the assumption that someone does fall. And all these aforementioned points put together means that there's likely some combination of the titular characters, so that being Team RWBY, side characters, so Orange, Crow, the Happy Huntresses, Aesop's, characters like that, and antagonists, so outright villains and Harriet type characters. So let's figure out the most likely scenario, or the best scenario. Now, I'll start the theory part of this video with the scenario I thought of while recording my Chapter 12 breakdown, which was RWBY, Yang, Nora, Penny, and Neo fall off the path and each land in a completely different area. Both of my theories are them all landing in separate areas and having to converge to work their way out. But I chose these 5 for 2 reasons. The first is the dynamic between Yang, RWBY, and Neo, with Neo wanting to kill RWBY, Yang likely wanting a rematch from the train, plus having to protect RWBY from Neo, plus Neo being down there would hinder Cinder from accessing the lamp, maybe causing her to jump down after, or who knows. The second is that both Penny and Nora have quests of self-realization being set up, because Penny has to figure out what it's like to be human, not relying on all her robotic parts or her weapons, and Nora has to figure out who just Nora is. Also, Penny falling down would mean that the villains up above would not have access to the staff, as she was the last person with it. As for how they fall off, I can see Neo and Yang getting into a scuffle a little too close to the edge and being knocked off, with RWBY trying to pedal burst after them, but something with the mechanics of this vault area screws with her semblance, maybe making it so she can't get enough altitude, or her semblance falters at the most important time. Nora would likely take a hit that was meant for Ren and be thrown off the cliff. Now, yes, it would be more poignant for Ren to do that, especially if he were to die from that, relating back to technically taking a hit that he knows would kill him would be technically suicide, which fits into Milan, but they're not going to die from this, so that could be saved for a later point. And Penny could either miscalculate on a dodge, since she doesn't have a supercomputer for her brain, or she tries to fly, forgetting that she's not got her robot boots. There are some problems with this theory, since it would mean having to pause any forward momentum on the actual story or the rest of the characters until these 5, maybe 6 if you count Cinder, manage to get out of the vault, as the main character is trapped in this area. It would also mean that anyone who didn't fall wouldn't get any screen time until the fallen characters return, which, while trimming down the cast, isn't that bad. We've got a shit ton of people, 23 main people moving from Atlas to Vacuo, not counting Hazel, Mercury, who are going to be there, all of the teams at Vacuo, Salem. The problem with cutting it down in this way means that Weiss and Blake, Weiss already had very little to do in Volume 8, but they wouldn't be able to feature at all while they're stuck in the vault. The final problem is that this combination, it doesn't really fit with just one of the theorized outcomes of the fall. Now sure, there could be multiple, like they could take inspiration from, say, the CW verse Crisis on Infinite Earths, where all the characters got trapped in the Speed Force, having to relive moments from their life all separated and everything, but have each one in their own localized world. So some are in the past, some are alternate dimensions, some are in a Wonderland type scenario, just to mesh them all together so that it would work for any character that falls. And this is sort of what's based on, it's based on with my second theory, but this first one is based off a singular area. Because RWBY and Yang, they'd profit greatly as characters from being impartial viewers of Team Stark's backstory, getting more context on their parents, their roles with Ozpin, what happened to make Raven turn away from the group, what happened to make Crow distance himself from everyone, what actually happened with Summer. They'd profit greatly from learning this. Whereas Nora would profit greatly from a trip through her own memories and also seeing possible outcomes of scenarios had she not been doing what she did in those. So, sort of like that Fairly Odd Parent, or, well, not necessarily that, it's a trope used in a lot of things, but where Timmy wished to see what it would be like if he were never born, if I remember correctly, and that big buff fairy just shows him that everyone's life would be magnificent had he not been born. But the opposite, where for one, Ren would have died against the Knucklevi. So there's that. There's also Team Juniper would have failed their preliminary match in the Vital Festival. They wouldn't have been able to take down the Deathstalker on their initiation. A lot of things, even leading back to before Beacon, where things would have gone completely different had Nora either not played the role she had, or had she not been there at all, and she'd profit greatly from seeing these scenarios. Neo, however, she wouldn't fit in any of the scenarios really. I mean, yeah, she could fit in Wonderland, mainly so that we can actually see the Cheshire Cat inspired characters, so people would stop comparing her to them. But she doesn't fit in Team Stark. She doesn't fit in Nora's backstory. She doesn't even fit as the main antagonist, because her whole thing is stealthy infiltration, not being in the limelight and everything. And I feel that with her character, you can't have a pure focus on her without making her do things that she normally wouldn't. And also, the main reason I put her down here is so we could get her backstory, if we do get past events, and so that she could learn that RWBY didn't directly kill Torchwick. In fact, he was almost going to kill her had he not been eaten, without Neo having to use the final question. And Penny, again, makes no sense for her to witness memories. She has no idea who Team Stark is. Well, she knows who one member is. She knows Crow, but she has no idea who they are. She knows as much about Ozpin and all that as the rest of the kids do, so maybe she could get the extra backstory there, but it wouldn't help her realize what it is to become human. Also, she's a lot younger than everyone else, so she wouldn't have much of her own memories. On the other hand, RWBY might lose her scythe up on the bridge, sort of invoking that final image of the opening, where Crescent Rose is just stuck in the ice by itself. So she'd have to be fighting through this unknown land without it, giving her an extra boost into hand-to-hand combat, which we know she still lacks at. Penny having to learn to fight and survive without her robotic components or swords would fit in Wonderland. Nora traveling alone through Wonderland would work. But Yang's only goal down there would be to find RWBY. She has no need for a Wonderland-like scenario in this grouping. And Neo, as I said, doesn't make sense as the forefront antagonist, even if it's just for half a volume. So while I think this could be a possibility, those specific characters don't work. Now, another possibility I proposed is them taking inspiration from the Mark of Athena, which is the very end of it, where Annabeth is pulled into Tartarus by one of Arachne's webs. So Percy, he tasks himself with trying to pull her back out of the pit. And when he realizes he can't do this, he tells Nico to take the others and to meet them where the doors of Hades are. We know that RWBY pulls inspiration from a lot of different forms of medias. We've seen it with like character arcs. We've seen it with actual world building elements. Heck, all the characters take inspiration from existing characters. So it would be entirely within the realm of possibility that they do eventually pull from Percy Jackson, provided someone knows of Percy Jackson in the creation group. And rather than it just being 2 people falling into Tartarus, well, 7 other people are traveling to meet them at the end, because, again, that's 9, that's not even half of our main group. I say split it up into 2. So you have half the people fall into the wherever they land up, whether it be a mishmash, whether it be a Wonderland style, whatever. Half of them fall down there, half of them have already made it through the vault, and they're both having to work together down there, trying to survive and figure a way out and come together, and upstairs having to get the Elysian citizens settled, like helping them survive in the vacuum wastelands, possibly encountering Tyrion and Mercury already, trying to figure out a way to free their friends, and they'd both be doing equal amount of focus in the volume. This could last the entire volume, and technically the ones downstairs would have more work, but I know so far Percy Jackson fans are probably screaming at me in the comments saying, you said you were relating this to the Mark of Athena, but everything you've described so far is more House of Hades with the actual traveling, but I'm getting to that. So, with this scenario that I've just described, half the group in, half the group out, let's try to figure out who will be in Team Vault and who will be in Team Vacuo. As I said, there are currently 23 main or side characters. We've got Team RWBY, Team Orange, Crow, Penny, Emerald, the Happy Huntresses, the Aesops, including Winter, Cinder, Neo, and Watts. But I think a few of these characters can be instantly excluded from the team possibility, like May, Vine, Watts, and Harriet. Characters, it doesn't make sense because they're either not important, wouldn't work in any of the scenarios, or have already had their main group spotlight, and it's going to pass on to one of the others. And there are also combinations that wouldn't make sense being on the same team, like Penny with her maiden abilities and the staff, and Oscar with Ozpin and the magic, because that would just make one team way too overpowered. Another pairing, Crow and Robin. Each team should have an adult leader figure, and I'll get to which group I think they should go with. Weiss or Winter, because they're both basically the exact same character in terms of abilities, Winters is more honed, so this could be an opportunity for Weiss to further hone her abilities in being a support mage. Ren or Nora. This is important solely for Nora moving forward with how we've left her at the end of chapter 12. And either Blake or Ruby. I'll get to this pairing later, but when I get to it, you'll see why I've singled those two out. So one of each of those pairs will fall and one will make it out. Already, that's a guaranteed 10 people who will be making it outside the vault, and at least 5 people who will be falling. And that leaves 8 people in the left to sort category. So let's first figure out who needs to fall. First up, we have Penny. For reasons I've mentioned before, both on the personal self-realization journey and to take the powers and the staff away from the external group. Similarly, Nora, for reasons I've explored, has to go on the personal journey. And her goal for this can't have anything to do with Ren. She needs to figure out who she is on her own, and if she was on the external team, part of her whole goal for the arc would be saving a group, saving Ren. So, not Nora focused, partially Ren focused. Whereas if she's in the area, sure, her goal may be meeting up with everyone else who fell, but it would be surviving and finding herself to get out. Yang and Nia. In no scenario have I envisioned Yang not falling. But I want these two to be the first to find each other and have to work together out of necessity. Neither trusting each other, both wanting to throw down with the other, but both realizing that they need the other's abilities to get them through the hard times, Yang taking the forward approach and Neo hiding them from the stuff that Yang can't get through. Cinder, she will be the Arachne of this situation, to bring it back to Mark of Athena. I believe she will be the main instigator of almost everyone who falls, before falling herself, either being knocked off or tackled or just who knows. And to relate her to Arachne, her grim arm will act as the web that was wrapped around Annabeth's ankle. And this brings me to the Ruby or Blake pairing, where either Ruby takes the role of Annabeth and Yang takes the role of Percy, letting herself go down with her sister, telling the others to find a way to bring them back, or Yang takes the role of Annabeth and Blake is Percy, which would lead more into the actual characters of Annabeth and Percy, since they were a couple, though I'm leaning more towards Ruby, since it would once again split Yang and Blake up. But this time, Blake will have not known whether Yang was alive or dead. So this would create a scene in which their reunion would have a more appropriate scenario for the kiss to actually happen, and would still happen before Blake meets back up with Sun, because it needs to happen before that. It needs to happen before that, because otherwise it's just going to reignite the worst part of the shipping wars, because people will have Yang and Sun both with Blake, and any interaction with either is going to be hate thrown at the other people. And then the worst people from each group, when the other pair interacts, will throw hate towards RWBY. And so, just for ease of mind for everyone involved, Bumblebee is going to happen. The kiss needs to happen before Sun is back in the picture. I may have gone slightly off topic, but it needed to be said. Just like this next point needs to be said. Crow needs to be on whichever team RWBY isn't. Because while he does care for Yang, he has shown more emotional investment in his on-screen depiction with RWBY. And part of that has to do with Summer. Because yes, Yang is Summer's daughter by all things but blood. RWBY is the spitting image of Summer in every way, including, well, I can't say including personality because we don't know Summer's personality, but in every way, RWBY is a carbon copy of Summer. And for RWBY to fall while Crow doesn't would be like Crow losing Summer all over again. Now, the next one's going to be a little controversial, but I reckon Joanna, she should feature prominently in this next arc, like how May did in Volume 8, since she's the Happy Huntress that we've seen the least of. We know the same about her as we do Fiona, which is just the basis of their character. Actually, we know less because we don't know Joanna's semblance. But because Fiona was instantly grabbed onto and favorited by the fandom, it feels like we know her more than Joanna. And Robin should be with whichever side only has one Happy Huntress. So if Joanna and Fiona fall, that means that she will be outside the vault. And for that to happen, it would make more sense for Blake to fall with Yang and Crow to fall as well. Whereas if only Joanna falls, then Robin falls, RWBY falls, Crow doesn't. Just for the proper dynamics of everything, I'd also like a scene of, as she's about to fall, her turning to Crow and telling him to look after her girls, meaning the Happy Huntresses, just to show how much she does trust and believe in his abilities. And so that he has someone, well, two people to support him, with Robin falling as well. So far, we have Penny, Nora, Yang, Neo, Cinder, RWBY, Joanna, and Robin as the people who will fall. As the most needed to fall for the story to go out the way I think it will. I almost said I think it should. What I think should happen has no merit over the story. What I think may happen has no merit over the story. It's already been done, like written, but whatever. We have those 8 people who will fall. And we have May, Vine, Watts, Harriet, Oscar, Ren, Blake, Crow, and Fiona as the people who don't fall, which leaves Weiss, Jean, Emerald, Winter, Marrow, and Elm still to be sorted. So 8 who will fall, 9 who won't, and 6 to be determined. I was thinking about putting Weiss and Jean in a configuration to keep both teams with an even number inside the vault and outside the vault. So that means Jean would have fallen with Nora and Weiss would have remained with Blake. But as I was thinking more on this, I sort of jumped on a different wavelength into thinking both of them should fall. Weiss should fall so that Willow and Whitley have to depend on Winter, repairing that relationship the best they can, just to finalize the Schnee arc, and Jean so he can be an integral part in the main fight of this arc, which I am ripping entirely from You All Right's Cinder destroying RWBY video, because he makes a lot of good points there, and basically he only makes good points there, and well, this would be the perfect place to do it. So Jean should be there as well. This leaves Emerald, who I'm putting in the vault so she can also be a part of that fight. And this means she stands up to Cinder. I don't think this would have happened on the pathways in any meaning, because Cinder would go in thinking that Emerald is tricking the kids and then just instantly lash out the moment she gets any hint otherwise, so Emerald wouldn't have the chance to stand up to her. Alum is also going down in the vault, mainly so she has to work with the kids she's wanted to capture for a volume and a half. She's the second Aesop, well, technically the third if you count Winter as an Aesop, but she's the second original Aesop who looks like they're going to defect. Vine being the third, but I reckon he can do that outside the vault with Marrow's help against the newest antagonist, that being Harriet. You can't tell me she's not a villain now. She was willing to bomb Mantle, she wanted to kill kids, so she's the newest villain, maybe on Salem's side, maybe as a third faction, I don't know. But she will be one of the main antagonists for the external team. The final point I want to make out is, regardless of whichever pairings and that from this scenario play out, the configuration works provided they all start off in separate locations. Like, say, some are in memories, some are in alternate outcomes, some are in Wonderland, some are just in like a hellscape like Tartarus would be. Also, I've already mentioned that the main fight is Cinder v RWBY, with Cinder absolutely demolishing RWBY in that fight, only to be saved last second by reinforcement, but not before given substantial bodily damage. And I've linked that theory in the description and in the iCard. You've probably already seen it pop up, or I've linked it here. I haven't decided in this recording, but yeah. I personally, out of the two that I've given, I would have done it with this second scenario being the one that plays out. Anyway, if you guys enjoyed this theory video and want to theorize your own combination of people who will fall, want to point out the flaws and holes in my theories that I've provided, or you just want to talk about the possibilities of what's down in the vault, comment them down below. And with that being said, I'll catch you in the next one.